Welcome to the Heartland Running Podcast. Join Crystal, Andy, and Chandler as they explore all things running related in the Heartland and beyond.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Heartland Running Podcast. I'm Crystal.
I'm Andy.
And I have a confession. So, some weeks when we have our guests on, we pick them because our listeners have suggested a topic or a guest has reached out to us. We do a lot of research. We make a lot of notes. And then there's other weeks like this where I go, hey, I'm going to do this for totally selfish reasons. And I have no notes. And so that's what tonight's about. So we'll
just play it by ear. It's no big deal.
Yeah. And so tonight's guest, we have David Hale with us. And David's actually from our Facebook group. So in some ways, I almost feel like this is like an internet blind date too. So totally unprepared. But part of our Facebook group, one of the things that we've started doing is we do our dailies. So somebody starts a post and we have the thread and we all talk about kind of what our training is for the day and, you know, whether we're resting or that. And it also helps us figure out, you know, who's training for what. And I found David was doing a lot of, and I'm sure we'll get into this, but he was doing a lot of stadium stairs and this kind of stuff. And I was really fascinated by it and found out it was because he was training for the Georgia Death Race, which is something that is on my bucket list. And I was super, super fascinated by it. So, of course, for selfish reasons, I want to find out about it from somebody who's doing it, who's done it. And he was so awesome because he agreed to come on no matter what, before he had even left for the race. So I'm super excited. So welcome, David.
Good to be here.
Now I have to ask you because I absolutely know nothing about you other than, you know, what I've seen from the Facebook post. So I just want, do you go by David? Do you go by Dave?
I go by all of the above. Most people they notice me as, oh, you're the guy that wears pink shorts.
Well, we'll call you Pink Short Dude then.
I'm the pink shorts guy. They're like, that's one thing that stands out. I always wear pink shorts for my races.
Well, of course, I have to say I'm looking at a picture of you now, though, from the race, and you're wearing black.
Well, those are the compression shorts. Believe it or not, women's shorts, the only shorts that I can find in pink, ride up on me a little bit, and I've got that jacket tied around my waist. But if you look closely, there's pink sticking out the bottom just a little bit there.
There is. Okay, yes, I do see it, so I totally understand. Well, thanks so much for, first of all, agreeing to come on. And I thought it was kind of cool that you agreed to come on, you know, before you even headed out to the race. So, you know, finish or not, you were coming on. So I thought that was pretty cool of you.
Yeah, well, it was dangerously close to not finishing the wall.
So, like I said, I don't know anything about you or most of our listeners other than, you know, I'm sure your family will check it out. So tell us about you. Tell us, you know, where you're from, what you do, how you got into running.
So I'm from Oklahoma. I consider Tulsa my hometown, but I live in Enid now. I started running really young. The neighborhood track coach, we went to church with him and he lived just around the corner from us. And so he recruited my family somehow to start running track. When I was a little kid, I was a little bit pudgy. And so I started throwing shot put and discus, and I wasn't very good at it. But my older brother is a really good runner, so he was always getting medals and ribbons and stuff, and I was not. So I started looking at how in the world am I going to start getting medals and whatnot. And I figured out that nobody in the 7-8-year-old age group, that's about how old I was running the 800. So I signed up for the 800. Because then I could get a medal or a ribbon or something. I'd get something. And I ran the 800. The first 800 I ever ran, they lumped all the age groups together under 12. And I actually got lapped the first 800 I ever ran. So special talent there. But eventually, blossomed. I ran all through junior high and high school. I actually ran cross country at Oklahoma State my freshman year as a walk-on. And then I actually stopped before track because I had a really brutally honest coach who said, you'll never be competitive. And it kind of from there, and I still run. So
now you're out doing ultras and this cool stuff. What's your brother doing?
My brother is running ridiculously fast 5Ks, 10Ks, and half marathons.
Yeah.
And he has triathlons.
But is he out doing ultras?
He is not.
Well, see, there you go.
Almost talked me into doing one me in the fall. But then he backed out. He's like, I'm not sure I could run that far.
See, so I think you still have one up on him.
I'm going to take my wins where I get them with my older brother. He's always been athletic.
Well, hey, I'm a former Oklahoma State guy, so go Pokes. One thing that I really want to hear about is this Georgia death race, and so it sounds terrible. So, can you give us a little bit of a description of what that race is, and where it is, and how that's going to work?
And isn't it awesome? We love to sign up for races that have the word death. It's right there in the title, and we're like, hey, yeah, that sounds awesome. Sign us up.
That sounds good. We should do that.
It's always a good idea. That's the great thing about ultra runners is it's always a good idea. It sounds terrible to everybody else. Yeah. So the Georgia Death Race is, I think, listed officially as a 68-ish mile race. You'll get a little bit of a debate as to whether it's between 72 and 74 miles. I heard the race director, Sean the Run Bum Blanton, he mentioned that it was 74 miles. So I'm going to go with that distance officially.
Heck yeah.
Mile race in the mountains of Georgia, just about an hour north of Atlanta at Amacola Falls is where it finishes. And it has about 40,000 feet of elevation change. That means 20,000 up and 20,000 down.
Wow.
And for a guy who's from Enid, Oklahoma, Great Plains.
Yeah, it's really flat out there.
A lot of stadium stairs.
So leading up to this, how many ultras have you done? And I believe that you said that this was your longest race to date. Is that correct?
That is correct. So I've done about 10 or 15 ultras prior to this. The longest one I've done was, and as is true with ultras, it's listed as a 50-mile distance. It ended up being 54. But a 54-mile race was the longest race that I've ever done prior to this.
And how long ago was that?
So I actually started doing ultra runs about a year and a half ago.
Wait, so you've done you said 10 to 15, something like that. And this has all been within the past year and a half?
Yes.
Damn.
You are flat cranking out the miles.
So,
yes.
I do one ultra a year. That's it.
So what were you doing leading up to this? Were you doing marathons? Were you a road guy? I mean, I feel like before we do, there's a whole lot of stuff here.
I wasn't really ever a road guy. I never loved road running. I always, in high school when I was doing cross country and track, I always loved cross country. I loved running through the woods. It was something I enjoyed more. Before I started doing ultras, I've done actually more marathons in the last year and a half than I had done prior to starting ultras. My first marathon I ever ran was actually part of an Ironman triathlon.
Of course it was.
And prior to that, I had never even run a half marathon.
Oh, jeez.
I take giant bites when I go for it. I'm like all or nothing.
Have you ever DNF'd anything, or have you been successful at everything so far?
So far, I have completed every race that I've ever started.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You totally have your brother beat. I know nothing about your brother, but...
Yeah, half marathons, 5Ks, 10Ks, whatever.
So what made you jump into the ultra world then?
Honestly, it was another podcast that I'll leave the name off.
Oh, but, that's fine. No, we're happy to share good podcasts around here.
10 Junk Miles.
Okay, yeah.
So Scott Kumar was, I don't even know how I ran into that podcast. But somehow I ran into that podcast, must have been recommended by a friend or something, and started listening to it. And he always talks about, hey, I'm an overweight old guy from Chicago, and I run ultras. And I was like, hey, you know what? Maybe that's something I could do. So I went ahead and I signed up for a 50K, and my first 50K was every bit as miserable as the Georgia Death Race was to me because I was badly undertrained. Training makes a big difference. I went for a run today, just a few days after the Georgia Death Race, and it was probably 2 weeks before I could run after my first 50K.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I went and trained for like a 5K to my first 50K. And
so how long did that first 50K take you?
Took me 6.5 hours.
Oh, but that's still a decent time, though, for a trail 50K.
It is. I was hoping to go sub 6 hours. And the great thing about Garmin watches is they'll give you your moving time. and my moving time was sub 6 hours, but I spent 45 minutes at aid stations.
Yeah.
But
okay, so you said that training is everything, and so you've done quite a few of these ultras, and you're getting ready for this one big one right here, which is going to be your longest distance ever. What does your training look like whenever you're getting ready for a race?
Leading up to the Georgia Death Race, I was running between 8 and 10 miles every morning. Mm-hmm. And then on weekends, I'd run usually on Friday morning before work. I'd go out and I'd run a half marathon and then run about 20 to 25 miles on Saturday mornings.
Yeah. And
Sundays are an off day for me. I take Thursdays and Sundays off as rest days.
Okay, so that's some pretty big miles that you're running all week long. So, that's a lot of miles. I know that a lot of people train differently. Some people do a little bit more intense miles, but shorter mileage weeks, and some people do super easy, as Crystal says, super chill, and do a little bit longer. So it sounds like you stick with the longer mileage.
Yeah, I figure the longer the race gets for me, it's more about having legs to keep moving at the end than going fast. I'm not going to be an Andrew Miller. Actually, the Georgia Death Race, it took me almost to the minute, exactly twice as long as Andrew Miller, who won it. I'm not going to challenge that guy. For me, it's the experience going out, being in the woods, and showing what I can do what I can do personally. What can I do this? Can I go out and can I run 74 miles through the mountains and survive? And that's really what I'm looking for.
So when you're training during the week, do you have access to the trails during the week, or are you on the roads during the week and trails on the weekend? Or
where I live, there aren't trails within about a half an hour. It would be the closest trails. So I run the dirt farm roads. Is what I do for my trail training. And then the races that I do, all my races are on trails. And that's where I get most of my trail time, because I try not to take too much time away from my wife and son.
Yeah.
So still allow me to do this crazy stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. You have access to those farm roads like that. Because I'm similar. My closest trails, same thing, about half an hour away. But I don't have any cool farm roads, so I'm running through suburbia, and that's just not. It's not quite the same.
Yeah, I live right on the edge of town, so it's a mile and a half from me to dirt roads.
Oh, that's awesome. So I want to know when did you first find out about the Georgia Death Race, and what made you decide that, hey, yeah, I want to do this?
So it would have been a little over a year ago was when I found out about it. And it was just before the Georgia Death Race last year. And I really decided I wanted to do it when I finished my first 50 miler. I was like, okay, if I can do 50 miles, maybe I can do this Georgia Death Race. And it was a lottery. So, I put my information into the lottery to try and get in, and I got lucky. And I thought, it's a lottery. I probably won't get in the first time. So I'll put in this year, and then maybe I'll get in next time around. And I put in, and I got in, and I'm like, well, time to buckle down, get after it.
That's cool. This is the first year it went to a lottery, wasn't it?
I think it's second year.
Is it the second year? Oh, shows you how much I pay attention then.
Okay, so since this race is a lottery, then it's a pretty popular race. Then I don't know anything about it. Are there going to be some big time runners that are going to be there? Some really competitive people?
Yeah. So the race is actually, it happened last weekend. So it's done. But Andrew Miller, he came out and he did it, and he's a former Western States winner. The year that Jim Walmsley went off course, and that's what everybody talks about. Andrew Miller's the guy who won that year. So yeah, I mean, there's big name runners who come out. Bob Shebest, who, if you follow any ultra running, he's the guy that finished third place at every golden ticket race there was last year to get a golden ticket into the Western States 100. He finished third place. He actually got second place at the Georgia Death Race this year, so he's got his golden ticket finally.
Yes, he had a great story this year.
But yeah, I mean, it attracts usually 5 or 10. It's a lead pack that'll be out there 2 hours ahead of the next people.
So now, who goes with you to these races? Do you have anyone who travels with you? Do you have a crew?
No, just me and the mouse in my pocket. So, my wife isn't a runner. She thinks I'm nuts. She allows me to do this stuff, but she's like, come back in one piece and I'll let you do another one maybe. So I go out and I do it by myself. And that's the great thing about the trail community is I went out to the Georgia Death Race. I did not have a pacer and I didn't have a hotel room.
Wait, you didn't have a hotel room either?
No. I have a friend who lives in Atlanta that's actually an hour. He lives an hour and a half from the start.
Okay.
And I was going to stay with him if I couldn't find someone to let me stay closer. So I show up at registration. I'm just talking to people, and this group that's standing next to me goes, "Okay, we've got to find you a runner to pace to one of their guys." And I'm like, "Hey, I don't have anybody to pace me. You want to pace me?" And he's like, "Sure." And so as I'm talking to those guys, one of the other people that they picked up to pace, they drove up from Florida just to find people to pace.
Wow.
And to volunteer at the race.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, they came up and they did the check-in race morning. And then after that, they wanted to just find people that they could pace just to be involved in the race.
That's so cool.
And somebody else that they were pacing actually had an extra spot in the room. So I went and slept on somebody's floor about 20 minutes from the start, and it worked out.
You just don't get that anywhere else. I love that.
Yes. Yeah, the trail community is very helpful. It's like, I mean, you can show up at a race without a crew, without a pacer, and you'll find somebody that'll help you out.
That's cool. So you flew, right?
Yes, I flew out from Dallas. My parents live down in Dallas, so I drove down there and flew from there to Atlanta.
See, have you flown to a race before, like an ultra before, or do you normally go within driving distance?
Usually I'm within driving distance to consider 6 hours driving distance.
Yeah. And that's okay. So I'd be about the same for an ultra because you have to be kind of, in somewhat one piece to drive back. And so I've only ever had to fly out to one ultra before. And that's when I went out to Kansas. I don't see, because I don't like to check bags and I'm not going to put my running stuff in a checked bag. So I'm down to what I can stuff into a carry-on. And I don't know, it freaks me out because I like to have like all of my stuffs. I have to have all the stuffs.
I checked a bag that had all of my stuff. And then I had my race day bag that was my backpack that had my running shoes, my jersey, the stuff that I absolutely had to have race day. It was all in one bag. And I carried that on.
So, but clearly everything worked out for you then. Yeah, that just, see, I can't do it.
Really, whenever you're talking like a good game plan, if you are going to fly out somewhere, then to go ahead and have that carry on that has just your absolute essentials to where in case you lose that bag and that bag doesn't make it to where you're going to go, then, I mean, you can at least still do the race and not have to go buy all new stuff or just, not have the things that you need.
Yeah. I mean, you could end up like there was a guy actually race morning and he didn't lose his stuff, but he got there race morning and there was a hole in the bladder for his hydration pack.
Oh.
So he had to carry water. So luckily, I had an extra handheld. And if you're looking for a good handheld, this is where I plugged. I'm an Orange Mud ambassador. Sorry, everybody. I'm going to plug their products because I think they're awesome.
Well, we love Orange Mud here, so go for it.
I had an extra Orange Mud handheld that I went and grabbed out of my bonus bag that had all my stuff in it. Was I going to carry a handheld? No, I was carrying my pack. But turned out great for this guy, and he got a free Orange Mud handheld out of it. So
that's cool.
To him, and he ran, and as far as I know, he finished the race. I have no idea.
Yeah. And so that's cool. So in fact, while we're going to do this now, while we're on Orange Mud, because we love Orange Mud, and we've had Josh on here twice. I believe that Josh was generous enough, and he actually gave you a discount code for the listeners. Did he not?
Yes, we have a discount code that's specifically for those of you out listening to this podcast, and it's GDR, as in Georgia Death Race, GDR David. And David, because you're listening to me. And that's good for 15% discount.
Thanks, Josh. We love you.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. Okay, so what's your favorite pack?
My favorite pack is the VP2 Venture Pack 2. It's got 2 water bottles, sit right on your shoulders. The thing that I like about them is it rides high, sits up high on your shoulders so you don't get some of that lower back pain that you might get when you're carrying some of that other stuff. At least I do when I'm carrying those other styles of packs. It rides up really high, and I carry 2 24-ounce bottles in it. So, you're carrying 50 ounces of water. And the other thing I like about it is they're those like bike bottles. And so I can actually track how much water I'm taking in better. I can track that stuff, and I'll put water in one. And then you folks actually turned me on to the sword. And I would have switched to using the sword because the tailwind stuff didn't work for me, but sword has been working pretty well for me. And so I can track how much I'm actually drinking.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's exactly what I do is and I've got that same pack, and I'll put water in one pack and I'll put sword in the other pack. And it just works great. Love it.
And also, too, since we're talking discounts and all that other stuff, for people who are listening, don't forget that Heartland Runner, if you go to drinksword.com, they'll get you 20% there. So we'll plug all the things and all the discounts codes because, let's face it, runners like discounts. So
we do.
So, and you know what? I will also say for Orange Mud, the one item that I love from Orange Mud, and I feel like it's so like underrated or overlooked, is I love their arm sleeves. And
yes.
They have the white ones, with the pockets in it. So one, you can use them to keep warm, but I love them in the summer, and I always make use of them to stuff them with ice. And they don't chafe. I'd worried because they had like a seam in it. I'm like, oh, are these going to chafe? And they're awesome. I love them.
I've never used those.
Arm warmers is a lot of your clothing when it gets wet will get cold, like, overnight when you get in the night hours on these ultras. It'll start to get cold, but my experience is that those arm warmers actually seem almost warmer when they're a little bit damp after you sweat on them a little bit.
Yeah, they're awesome. So that's my favorite things. All right, so we'll go back to the race. So what was the weather like for the race? What was predicted and then what actually happened? Because weather right now everywhere has just been crazy.
So I'm one of those people that gets really into what the weather is going to do. So 2 weeks out, it was supposed to rain. Luckily, as we got closer, that changed, and we ended up having almost a perfect day. It was in the low to mid 30s when it started, and only got up to the mid 60s during the peak of the day, and then finished at about 40 degrees. So, it was a pretty awesome day. Just a few clouds in the sky. Ended up being almost a perfect race day.
Oh, that sounds awesome. What were trail conditions like? Had it been raining leading up to it?
Been raining earlier that week, but this trail drained ridiculously well. There were a couple places where there's a little runoff going across the trail, but the trail was dry. You didn't have to worry about your feet getting wet until at the very end of the Georgia Death Race. There's this really nice bridge that crosses the river, and Sean routes the race. He actually blocks off the bridge and makes you run through the river. Other than that, your feet were dry. It was fantastic.
And how deep's the crossing?
So as we were coming down, I was getting close to the cutoff for getting an entry into the lottery for the Western States, because that cuts off at 23 hours, and I was just under that. So I jumped in. The place I jumped in, it was almost knee deep on me. But everybody else was being a little more ginger and taking a better route probably. And it looked like people were getting about mid-shin. But where I jumped in, it was knee deep, and I just took off running. I'm like, I'm not risking that my watch is off a couple of minutes. I got to get this.
That's awesome. So training leading up to it, doing all the miles, doing the stadium stairs, doing all that kind of stuff. Leading into it, what do you feel like you did right? And what do you feel like you would change?
So what I think I did well is I had tons of energy all day. I did that well. I was able to get the endurance that I needed, figure out my nutrition so that I kept my energy levels up all day. Mentally, I was there. So I think I did well as far as that. Thing that I didn't do well, and it's really hard because I did a 25-mile run and had 79 feet of gain. That's how flat it is here.
Wow.
I would do more stairs, just more stairs. I would run from my house to the stadium and then run stadium stairs for an hour and run home. But I only did that one day a week. And if I were to do it again, I'd probably do that 2 days a week.
Wow. Yeah. When you're saying flat, I that's flat.
Yeah. It's very flat out there.
Yeah. 25-mile run that has 79 feet of gain. You can almost write that off to just GPS error.
Wow. So that's like one of those ones where they joke, you can see your dog running away for days.
Well, what they say in Enid, you can see 10 miles in any direction, and then you put a dime down and stand on it, and you can see 20 miles in any direction.
That's your elevation gate, and you kept stepping on the dime.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. It's flat as flat could be here.
So take us to the start of the race. What was the start like? What time does it start? Give us all the details.
5 a.m. is the official start. And if you want, you can actually take an hour head start. They have an early start option. If you do the early start option, though, you're not eligible for any of the awards. You can't win the race, which I wasn't in any danger of doing. But you also can't get that entry into Western states if you run fast enough. So I opted away from that. I went with the traditional 5 a.m. start. You start out in front of this group shelter in a campground, and the first probably mile is actually on pavement. You follow race director Sean Blanton. You follow his truck as he drives up, and then he peels off to one side to the right, and you go left up onto the trails. And he gives a little speech there, and you're off.
Well, and tell me, I want to know, talk about the railroad spike.
Oh, yes, the railroad spike. So this race, they actually, when you check in race morning, they give you an old rusty railroad spike. You have to carry with you the entire race. What? And if you get to the finish and you don't have your railroad spike, guess what? You didn't finish the race.
Like, how much crazy pressure is that?
It could really mess with your head if you didn't have a game plan for it. But I brought a sock to put it in so it wouldn't poke a hole in my pack because it's got jagged edges. I mean, it's an old used railroad spike. I brought a sock, put it in a sock, slid it in my pack, and every time I opened my pack, I just made sure the sock was still there. But yeah, he makes you carry that railroad spike, and then at the end, you turn that railroad spike in, and he gives you an engraved railroad spike, and it just says Georgia Death Race on it, and that's your finisher award.
That's cool. So it's no medals, no buckles, it's the spike.
It's the spike. But I tell you what, when you get that spike at the end, you are so happy to have that spike. It's like, the Georgia Death Race has like a 60-65% finisher rate. I mean, it's a tough race.
Oh, yeah.
And it's at the end, and you finish and you get that spike, and you think it's the best thing you've ever gotten because you actually got it. That's
cool. And it's point to point, correct?
Yes, it is. It is. It starts, I can't remember the name of the park that it starts at, but it is a 70 and change miles point to point race.
And so you were talking about your nutrition a bit. Do you set anything out in your drop bags? Talk a bit about the drop bags too. Did you have any out there? What did you have in there? Did you have any nutrition in there besides what you had talked about, or do you eat everything off the aid station tables?
So I'm pretty lucky that I have a pretty iron stomach. I can eat almost anything during a race, and it doesn't bother me at all. So I did do drop bags. There's 2 drop bags in spots in this race. And in those drop bags, I put Take 5 bars. For those of you who aren't familiar with what a Take 5 bar is, it's chocolate, caramel, peanut butter with a pretzel in the middle. Amazing.
Ooh.
Sounds good.
Put those in there. It's like everything race nutrition, and it tastes good when you're like sick of eating boiled potatoes. So I put a couple of those in each drop bag. And then I also put, I'm too cheap to buy the individual packs, so I buy the big bag of sword, and then I divided it out into little sandwich bags, and I put several of those in there. So as I went along the race, I could get more powder, because they can always put water in your bottle, and you pour that in and shake it up good.
And that's always fun going through airport security with the little white baggies, too.
Yes. Yeah.
Put those in the checked bags.
And the other thing that people don't understand about these energy drinks that you're getting, no matter what it is, that gets on the outside of your bag and they check your bag. Guess what it's going to come off as? It's a high dense energy. You're going to get flagged as potentially having an explosive.
Shut up.
So they're going to in your bag. Yes, I know people that have had that happen to them more than once.
Seriously?
Yes.
Well, here's some lessons, kids. I had no idea.
Your endurance drink mix.
Yes.
Wow.
You put it in the bag and put everything else over the top of it so it doesn't get on the outside. If for some reason it gets on the outside and your bag gets selected and they do that little wand thing they do on it to test for explosives, you're doomed. They're pulling everything out of your bag.
Oh, wow. So don't go, hey, yeah, this stuff's the bomb.
Yeah, bad idea.
I'm fun to go through the airport with, by the way.
Well, the weirdest thing I've ever carried through the airport, if you want to talk about being fun going through the airport, is I like to pretend like I'm a farmer when I'm not at work. Okay. And I carry freshly butchered chickens with a frozen chicken in my ice pack. And that really messed with the people in airport security. Because they're like, I don't know what that is. So they made me open my bag, and I'm like, it's just frozen chickens. They're like, okay, you're going to have to pull that out. So I pulled out 3 frozen chickens. Or 2 fresh and 1 frozen.
I don't even know where to go with this. Is your territory, Andy.
I love that. I think that's great. That's great.
Because I feel this sounds like something Andy would do. I mean, I remember the one time he's like, "Oh, I'm running late. I had to like deliver a calf in the dark." So,
yeah, it happens.
Yeah,
welcome to being a redneck. You know, pretending like I'm a farmer when I'm not at work. My mom said I was flying out to visit her, and she's like, "You know, it'd be really good fresh chicken." And I was like, "I got it. We're covered."
One time I had to fly to Atlanta, and I was carrying a whole bunch of bacon. I had like 100 pounds of bacon inside this ice chest that I had to check. And the bad thing about it is I didn't want anyone to take my bacon. And so what I did was I put a note inside of it that said that this was for microbial testing only, and then I made like actual labels that I stuck on the packages that said that it was contaminated product and not for human consumption, just so no one would take my bacon.
Sometimes you got to resort to extreme measures to get your fresh farm products through airport security.
That is correct.
Yeah, I'm thinking that whole not for human consumption contaminated thing, it might be cool to be put on my lunch and put it in the office refrigerator.
Do it. Yeah, you can make real official looking stuff if you try.
There we go. No one's going to touch my lunch anymore. I like it. Oh. Okay, wait. Now I'm like, I don't even remember where we were. Okay, so we're talking frozen chickens. So we're going back to the drop bag. So there were 2 drop bags. What kind of supplies do you like to have in your drop bags?
Really all I put in there is, that sword and those candy bars.
That's it?
That's it. I carry some more product placement, Squirrel's Nut Butter. I'm not sponsored by them, though. I just like their product. I carry that in my pack with me the whole way, because you never know when you might have something that starts to chafe and you gotta slather some of that on. So I carry that with me the whole way. I firmly believe in leaving my shoes on, because if I take them off to change shoes, I might not be able to get the other shoes on once I sit down. Your feet swell a little bit. And I wear Injinji socks, and if you've ever tried to get those toe socks on a swollen foot, terrible. You don't want to try to do that.
Yeah, I love the Injinjis too, but yeah, if you have to change a mid-race, it's not fun.
Yeah, I just don't. It's like, you know what? If my feet are getting torn up, my feet are getting torn up. I'll deal with it at the end.
So how far apart are the aid stations?
The aid stations were between, I think the shortest aid station split was about 4 or 5 miles, and the furthest was, I think, about 11. One thing they like to do with the Georgia Death Race is they like to mess with you. And so, all the mileages are ish. There was one that was listed as a 6 mile gap between the aid stations, and it ended up being 8 miles. And that almost cost me the race. Ooh. I literally ran into that aid station on the second, my watch turned over to the cutoff time as I ran into the aid station.
Oh. And what part, how far was that in the race?
37 miles into the race.
Oh, so it was still, you're looking at about halfway.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm thinking because my legs were cramping. I had issues with cramping. I think that's why I would do the more hills, because I think that would help with that cramping. My legs just weren't quite ready for the amount of climbing I was doing. And so I was having cramping issues, and they said, okay, 6 miles to the next aid station. And I took a look at how long I had to get there, and I planned that so that I would get there with about 10 minutes to spare so I could get through the aid station and be fine. And then it was 2 miles further than I planned. So my last half mile into that aid station, I actually I split about 8-minute mile for the last half mile. I'm like, I looked down at my watch, no joke, at one point in time, I was on a 6:13 mile pace in the last 200 yards, because my watch had turned over to the cutoff time. And I'm like, I have to be out the other side of that aid station before my watch turns over or I get cut off. And my race is over now.
So when you're getting tired and you're booking it like that, did you take any good spills?
I didn't in this race. It's weird. Like, I fell twice, but neither of them were major spills. It's a trail race. You're going to fall, but I didn't have any really exciting spills. But if you look at the pictures of some of the top men, they have blood from their knees, the tops of their shoes. I mean, those guys took some vicious spills. They were going twice as fast as I was, but they took some hard spills.
Wow. That's pretty good though that you only had two minor ones. So with all those hills and coming from the flatlands, what was harder on your body, the ups or the downs?
Absolutely the downs. And I knew going in the downhill running was going to be that it's easy to get on a treadmill and run that uphill and just practice that way. But it's really hard to get that training for downhill. So I tried a few different oddball things, lunges and things like that. But I don't think anything quite makes up for it running the downhills. At the end, my pacer's going, come on, this is a nice, easy downhill. We can take this fast. And I'm like, no, let's take this fast. I can run hill faster right now than I can run downhill.
Oh, yeah, it trashes you. And I think the other thing, too, is if you don't have a chance to do a whole lot of the hill running, once you get on trails, sometimes those fast downhills, until you kind of really build up some of that skill, it's scary to go down real fast, even before you get beat up.
So the one thing that I do have that I was lucky about is I actually lived in Salt Lake City for a few years. So I do have some experience running downhills.
Oh, that's good.
So the downhills, if I'm like on a 50K or less, I'm normally the guy that's bombing downhills because I weigh better than 200 pounds. I'm a bigger guy than the guys that are like super fast. And I use that weight to my advantage. Lean forward just a little bit and just take off down those hills. Not in this race. That wasn't happening. I was literally running uphill faster by a couple minutes per mile pace at the end than I was going downhill.
Yeah, I'm a very poor downhill runner, but I like the uphills.
Yeah.
I like the uphills because I walk and eat.
That is a bonus of the uphills.
See, that's why I like ultras. I'm like, the aid station's a buffet. You get a walk. Yeah, it's, I have all these pictures coming in, on the trails, and everyone has these beautiful things. I'm like always stuffing something into my mouth. That's mine.
If Georgia Death Race is really one of your bucket list races that you'd like to do, keep in mind that the first 20 miles, those uphills, are between 25 and 35% incline.
Yeah, I saw that. So it's bucket list, so that means like no time soon.
Yeah. You can't eat going up those hills for the 20 miles.
No, you're on your hands and knees practically going up that.
I actually debated getting down at one point in time doing, I don't know, spider or cat crawl, whatever you call it, where you're on your toes and your hands going up hills. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, that's brutal. So what were the aid stations like? I love the volunteers.
Some fairly typical of your aid station. Some of them had a lot of spirit. There's one aid station that is run by, they call themselves Team Dad Bod.
Yep.
And so familiar with them from the East Coast Trail and Ultra podcast.
Yes.
And their aid station was like a party. I mean, everything shy of a disco ball. They were things and coming in, they've got this loudspeaker, and they were messing with our heads. So they would turn the speaker up every now and then, knowing that we were close enough that we would hear the music and think we were close, but we were like 2 or 3 miles out still.
Oh, that's the worst.
Totally messed with us. But then when you got there, the funny thing is, the first thing is the guy that had the microphone. He goes, "We got anything you need, anything you need. If you need a hug, whatever." And so like they're like giving everybody hugs, and I don't know. It was all kinds of crazy. And they're also known as the Bacon Aid Station for the Georgia Death Race, which is a very important aid station for any ultra, in my opinion. I mean, it's the Bacon Aid Station. You can't go wrong with bacon.
That's see, you know what I'm thinking? We need a Heartland, aid station. We need to get maybe at like one of Durbin's races or something like that. We need to go out and we need to represent and do a really cool over the top Heartland aid station. And
like with the barbecue brisket.
Oh,
I'm thinking, yeah.
Yes. Although I got to warn people about burping the brisket up as you like head back out, but nobody's going to eat like, 3 sandwiches like I did before you go out. So.
Well, you give them brisket, but then the thing that I thought was the absolute best thing I got in an aid station, it was a mashed potato burrito.
Ooh.
Then you got food with you on the run. They had it wrapped in tin foil. I took a couple of those, slid them in my pockets, and you know what? Like, they were amazing.
That sounds perfect. I love anything potato. But then I'm thinking, like, it's carbs wrapped in carbs. Yes. You can't beat that.
Not at all. Not during an ultra, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking every day.
Yeah, like I got a burrito at another aid station, and it tasted great, but I couldn't swallow it. I couldn't get it down.
Yeah.
Like sausage and eggs and all the stuff that normally I'd be like all about. And it tasted amazing, but I ended up spitting it on the side of the trail because I couldn't get it down. That mashed potato, it went right down.
That just slides right down.
I'm going to have to remember that.
Mashed potato burritos.
Mashed potato burrito.
And that's your mashed potatoes on the go. I mean, that's really like in ultras, boiled potatoes, mashed potatoes are like go-to foods.
Yeah.
How do you carry it? You put it in a burrito.
That's what I'm going to start putting in my drop bags as tortillas.
Well, someone needs to invent, like, have you seen, like, the yogurt tubes? The yogurt? But they need to have mashed potatoes inside of them for ultras. You could just tear off the top and just kind of squeeze a little bit of mashed potato.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
or even like those apples, the applesauce squeezy things that they have.
Yeah.
Fill it full of potatoes.
Just filled up with mashed potatoes.
You can actually buy those and fill them on your own. They like Amazon.
Really?
You can buy those little pouches.
Oh, I think you're onto something, Andy.
Well, now, if you can mix the potatoes fine enough, you could probably put them into your bottles that's on your pack, and then you could just like suck straight mashed potatoes.
Now that just sounds weird.
Okay.
Apparently, there's a mashed potato line, and Andy crossed
it. Okay, I have taken it too far. I've crossed the line. I'm sorry about that.
We always get off on food tangents. So, how was you ended up? It was 20. You said 23 hours. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So clearly,
5
you were
minutes, 23.
So you were running through the night. How did the night treat you? And so your furthest was a 50 up until then. Had you done much night running?
My first 50 miler was an overnight 50 miler that started
perfect.
At 7 p.m. And it was the OSS CIA 50 miler up in Virginia. And it was fantastic. I loved that race, except for I broke my toe during that race. But, minor details.
It was great, except for the broken bones. Other than that, it was perfect.
Yeah. Well, I grew up playing soccer too, so broken toes are like old hat.
Oh, that's nothing then, yeah. So do you like the overnight hours? How did it treat you? When did you pick up your pacer?
So you pick up your pacer, it's at mile, again, with all the miles being ish, give or take about between 46 and 50 is where you pick up your pacer. So they're with you during those 9 hours. So you pick up your pacer in the daylight, and they run with you until you finish. So I had an awesome pacer. Like I said, the random guy that I picked up, his name's Chris, and Chris was an awesome pacer. He just knew how to keep me going, except for telling me, hey, let's run these downhills. We can get these downhills fast, because I'm like, no, my legs are killing me. I can't run downhill. But I mean, he was really good motivation. It was the first time I've ever had a pacer at any race. But yeah, he kept me motivated, kept me moving.
So when you're hitting those hours, are you getting grouchy at all? Or do you feel when you have a pacer that you don't know, do you almost feel like you have to be on good behavior?
I'm one of those people that's probably annoyingly nice even through all these. It's like I'm saying thank you to all the people at the aid stations, and it's like I don't get grumpy when I get tired. Well, I probably get grumpy when I get tired. My wife would disagree with that statement, for sure. But like in these ultras, when I get ultra tired, I'm still like pretty good spirits most of the time. So, but yeah, I definitely felt additional pressure. Like when I almost didn't make that cutoff, I think what was driving me at that point as much as anything is I can't let Chris down. He's waiting for me.
Oh.
I got to get. But yeah, I mean, you definitely want to be on better behavior for someone you don't know. If it was my wife, like I said, she would argue with me being annoyingly happy, and she'd probably be like, no. No, he's a pain in the butt when he's tired.
Yeah, you know what? I'm the same way. I'm totally a happy ultra runner. I always have the smile on. I'm thanking people, and I'm sure I'm annoying people. But yeah, when I'm tired at home, my family will like tell you I'm the exact opposite. And heaven forbid, I'm hungry and tired, then, that's really fun crystal time.
And he never gets hungry and tired during it. So that does.
Yeah, and it's so funny because that you're just it's fun. It's all part of it.
Yeah, exactly.
So what kind of nighttime setup do you have? What lights are you using? Do you have just a headlight? Do you use a waist light as well?
I just use a headlamp. The headlamp I use is, I went blank on the name, on the brand, but it was like $30 off of Amazon. It's like 150 lumen headlamp. It's got the little strap through the middle over the top of your head so that it doesn't fall off, slide down while you're running.
And do you pack extra batteries?
I do. That's actually required for the Georgia Death Race. You have to have an extra pack of batteries with you.
So talk about that. What equipment is required then? Do you have it at check-in?
Yeah, at check-in, they check to make sure you have a safety whistle, that you have one of those space blankets like they give out at the end of marathons. You have to carry one of those with you. So you have those two items. You have to have a jacket, a long sleeve jacket, and you have to carry your spike. I've got to be missing something. Oh, you have to have collapsible cup because it's a cupless race. Even if you're running with 2 water bottles, you still got to have it because, I don't know, they just require everybody to carry it. So I actually went out and bought specifically a collapsible for this that I saved the packaging on because I was debating returning it at the end of the race, but I was like, probably I'll hang on to it. Maybe I'll run the Georgia Death Race again and I'll need it again. So
there you go.
I think that's the list of what was required. I'm sure that somebody out there knows exactly what's on the list now and could tell me where I'm wrong. I'm also one of those people that's kind of an under planner. It's like, as I was packing my bag to leave, I'm like, okay, what's on this list? Okay, make sure that's in there, make sure that's in there, make sure that's in there, and head it out. Under planner, as is evidenced by the fact I didn't have a hotel or a pace for
Or he goes, I'm going to do an Ironman, and my longest up to now has been half a marathon, and, I'm just going to go and run out and do all these ultras within this short period of time. So,
yeah, I'm
under planner, overachiever.
Well, yeah, I don't plan too much, but I guess when it comes down to it, I think I tell people this because a lot of people are getting into triathlons, and you guys recently had your podcast about that a little bit. A lot of people are getting into triathlons, and people ask me about it because they know that I've done a few, and I really believe a big chunk of endurance athletics is your mental game. I think if you can run a half marathon, you can run a 50K. I think that if you can, if you know how to swim and you know how to ride a bike and you know how to run, you can do amazing things. I think people just mentally limit themselves too much.
Well, and I like to say if you don't have a plan, then, your plan can't fail.
It's true.
I really like what you said there about that mental aspect of it, about, not limiting yourself, allowing yourself to push yourself farther than what you thought that you actually could. Because I think that's absolutely correct. And I think that's a huge takeaway from this right here, from our conversation we're having on this podcast, that, your ability to make yourself do more than what you thought. I think that's huge.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like I said earlier, with my first 50K, I went in trained like I was going to go run a solid 5K. And I survived it. And it was a survival thing at that point. But I think it's just having that don't quit attitude gets you so far. And yeah, there's times when, like you might get timed out. I nearly got timed out at the Georgia Death Race. Or, you have something that's legitimately wrong, and you're like, okay, this isn't good. I need to stop. But I think a lot of times people are, they're like, oh, I'm a little bit sore. I need to stop. But you know what? A little bit sore is normal. That happens.
Yeah.
And you can make it through it.
Absolutely. So I know we're starting to get long in time, but I still have 2 more questions I want to make sure that we get in. So we're kind of talking about the mental aspect of it. Did you have a really low moment during the race?
Yeah, I did. When I started cramping up, I thought I could run this race in about 20 hours. hours. I thought that was a realistic goal for me. Obviously, I was almost 3 hours over that. And so when I started cramping up and I saw that 20 hours wasn't going to happen, psychologically, I had decided to quit at the third aid station in my head. And one of the people, this husband and wife that I stayed with the night before, the husband was running it. The wife was just there to help out. And she was there at that third aid station. And I came in and she's like, what do you need? Let's get you back out there. And she had this upbeat spirit. And I was like, okay, I can get back out there and she got me through that low point. And that was like the third aid station. I'm 20 miles in at this point. But this is the first ultra that I ever ran that I didn't swear that I was never going to run again during the race. Normally that's something that happens.
That's pretty cool. I do. I love that. And, we talked about the community and stuff, and I love that. There's been several ultras that I've finished and I've got back out there because of a complete stranger. And that's a really cool feeling.
Yeah, absolutely.
So my last question before I let you go, and Andy may have some more for you, but I want to hear, what was that finish like? And when did you know this is done? So
I knew that I was going to finish probably before I hit the last aid station. I was like, okay, I know we've got this. So I'm going to be able to finish the cutoff is 24 hours. At that point in time, I'm still thinking 24 hours. And I've given up the Western States lottery ticket. I'd given up on that 23 hours at that point in time. And so, but I'm like, I can finish this. And so I just started picking up steam and started getting going. And I realized probably 2 miles out, my pacer goes, first of all, he said, stop trying to do math. You're thinking on third grade level. Just trust me. Just let me do it. He's like, you can get 23 hours. If we hammer this hard, you can get that. So I gave it everything I had and I hammered it hard. And if you look at my Strava, it's going to say that I was doing like 20-minute miles, but I felt like I was doing 5-minute miles. But I ran hard in, and then I had given up on the 23 hours. So I looked down at my watch and I'm like, oh, I'm not getting there. And then all of a sudden the finish line is just ahead of us, 100 yards out. My pacer goes, you've got this. You've got, 5 minutes, you can get in there. And he said that all of a sudden, all the pain, all the ache that was there from all the miles, I took off running. I passed probably 4 people in the last 100 yards and then jumped into the river up to my knees. And when they were all being ginger, trying to make sure they found a neat path, I'm like, no way, I'm not letting this get away from me. And ran across and poured that spike out of my sock into the coffin there at the end. And it was awesome.
Oh, that's so cool.
That's a perfect way to end it. So anyway, David, thank you very much for coming on and telling your story. Is there anywhere on social media that's a good place if anyone wants to get a hold of you and reach you?
So on social media, David K. Hale on Facebook. I don't know whatever Facebook address is there. On Instagram, I'm Pink Shorts Running. On Twitter, I'm Pink Shorts Runner, if I remember correctly. I don't use Twitter a whole lot. But on Instagram, I'm Pink Shorts Running. And you'll see, I think it's a silhouette of me running across the plains right now is my profile. So, and then you'll see all my Georgia Death Race pictures are up there too.
All right. Well, very cool. Well, we thank you very much for coming on to the show. We appreciate you taking your time. And then if you want to learn a little bit more about Heartland Running, you can go to our website at www.heartlandrunning.com. If you want to leave a text message or call the show, you can certainly do that. And I don't know the number off the top of my head, but I'm sure you're not writing things down right now. So anyway, it's going to be in the show notes. And make sure you join our Facebook page and make sure you tell a friend about the podcast if you really enjoy it, and let them listen, and then stop by on wherever you download your podcasts and give us a rating. The more ratings we get, the more people can find the show. Crystal, do you have anything else?
No, the only thing that I want to say to Dave before we go is that we are very lucky for people who get Western State tickets and have been on our podcast. So we have at least 3 people who are guests this year who are going into 2018, and at least one of them, and I think possibly 2 of them, only had 1 ticket. So we're going to be your good luck charm.
We are good luck charm. So anyway.
And that's all I got.
Yep. If you want to get into Western states, come on the Heartland Running Podcast.
That's right.
We'll get you there.
Guaranteed. Right. No, this is not a guarantee.
Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, I'm Andy.
And I'm Crystal.
And we'll see you next time.